The semester was finally over, and as a reward for all our hard work and great grades at college, our parents were sending my sister and I on a trip to the mountains for a week of rest and relaxation. They had booked us a private cabin at the lake, had a rental car waiting for us, and given us each $500 and a round-trip plane ticket. So, with our bags all packed for a week of fun, our parents drove us to the airport, kissed us goodbye, and wished us a great week. Pammy and I found our seats on the jet and settled in for the 3-hour flight. We were both excited and looking forward to our well-deserved vacation. Pammy, who is 19 and a year younger than me, is studying nursing, and I am majoring in computer engineering. Our studies and courses are rough, so we were planning on taking full advantage of our summer off. Pammy and I sat down and buckled up our seat belts. Soon enough, the plane began to roll and we were off. Pammy and I mostly talked excitedly about what we planned to do in the coming week, while looking through the resort brochures featuring all the highlights of the town, the surrounding areas, and the resort itself. The flight seemed to be over in no time, and soon we were landing. Once inside the terminal, I walked beside my younger sister to the baggage claim area, then to the rental car booth. I noticed the usual admiration that Pammy gets whenever she goes out. It wasn't surprising. My sister is an absolute knockout. I get my own share of looks from the ladies as well. Being a former high school athlete, I am tall and have a pretty good build, but it's nothing compared to the number of guys who take notice of my sister. She's a 58, long-legged beauty, with a rich mane of flowing auburn hair, jade green eyes, golden brown, flawless skin, and a figure that drew considerable attention. Her well-proportioned figure, with a slender waist and graceful curves, was truly captivating. She's captivating and aware of her charm, and she likes to dress in a way that highlights her appealing features with style and good taste. We've always been very close, and I've taken it upon myself to be her protector, though I've gotten used to the stares. From an onlooker's standpoint, it wouldn't surprise me if some people thought she was a big-time model and I her bodyguard. We picked up our rental car, which turned out to be a Jeep Cherokee, and headed out to the parking lot, leaving an attendant on the sidewalk watching our bags until I drove around to pick them up. With map in hand, Pammy and I set out for the mountain resort. It took us about an hour and a half to reach it, as we stopped for groceries on the way. We parked outside the office and went in to find out what cabin had been reserved for us. The clerk gave us our keys and directions to our cabin. 10 minutes later, we were walking into a beautiful log cabin, complete with stone fireplace and a view of the lake. "Jessie, look," Pammy said, "our own little private beach." She was right. There was a line of thick pine trees running down from each side of the cabin to the lake, and sandwiched between them was about 30 feet of sand, forming a little beach. The cabin had 2 bedrooms, bathroom, kitchen, a dining area, and a large living room. I told Pammy to decide which bedroom she wanted while I brought in the bags and groceries. We went into our rooms to unpack. I finished first and was in the kitchen, putting away the groceries, when Pammy came out. "Jessie, can't that wait?" she asked. "Let's go down to our beach and soak up some rays." I turned around to say something and nearly dropped the bottle of ketchup I was holding. Pammy was standing by the sliding glass doors leading to the lake. She had a beach towel in one hand and was wearing what had to be a remarkably minimal bikini. I tried to speak, but couldn't manage to get any words out. And I felt a sudden, unexpected jolt of attraction, a reaction I hadn't experienced before when seeing her. Like I said before, we've always been close, and I've seen her plenty of times in bikinis, but seeing her so scantily clad like that. I think I was seeing her, for the first time, as a woman and not my sister. Still, my reaction startled me. Finally, I found my voice. You go ahead and I'll join you in a minute," I told her, all the while giving thanks I was behind a counter where she couldn't see my unexpected reaction. "Okay, but don't be too long," she said with a sweet smile. I watched as she turned and went out the door. I moved to the kitchen window to be able to watch her walking away from me as she headed down to the water, and was captivated by the graceful sway of her form as she strolled across the lawn. My unexpected reaction was becoming increasingly prominent and challenging to conceal. I turned to finish putting away the groceries, trying to take my mind off what had happened to me. But the image of my gorgeous sister was permanently burned into my memory. I knew I couldn't go walking down there in just a pair of gym shorts. My stirred state would be far too evident. So, I decided to take a moment to compose myself privately, hoping to regain my equilibrium. Just as I was about to head that way, I heard the sliding glass doors open and saw Pammy walk back in. "Darn," she said with a frown on her gorgeous face. "What's wrong?" I asked, still standing behind the kitchen counter. "Clouds moving in, blocking the sun. I think it's going to rain," she pouted. "Think I'll take a shower and wash this oil off. What do you want to do tonight? Shall we go out to eat or stay in?" "It's up to you," I said. "Well, the brochure says there's a nightclub at the main complex. How about we have dinner in the restaurant and then drinks and dancing? It's Saturday night, let's party," she said. "Sounds good to me," I told her. "You go and take your shower first. I'll take one after you, and we'll go out and party tonight." "Woo-hoo!" Pammy screamed, then laughed and bounced off to the bathroom. Somehow, in the hour and 15 minutes, Pammy was in the bathroom showering, and doing her hair and makeup, I managed to calm my stirred emotions by watching some television. I was sitting on the couch in the living room when Pammy came out of the bathroom, wearing just a wet towel, and entered the room. "The bathroom is all yours, bro. Don't worry, I left you some hot water." She giggled and trotted away to her room. I felt a familiar flutter of unease once again, but firmly pushed it aside and got up to take my shower. Standing there under the hot, then cold water, I asked myself what was happening to me. Was I going to be so unsettled every time I looked at my own sister? This was supposed to be a week of relaxation for me, but it was going to turn into a very long, uncomfortable week if I didn't get control of myself. I was just going to have to get hold of myself and put it out of my head. That's all there was to it. I wrapped a towel around my waist and walked to my room to get dressed. I put on a pair of khakis, a button-down shirt, and loafers. When I went out to the living room, I passed by Pammy's door and noticed it was still closed. I didn't see her around anywhere, so I sat down on the couch and proceeded to roll a joint. Just as I had finished, I heard her bedroom door open and Pammy walked into the room. She looked stunning in a black, clingy, halter-top dress with an ultra-short hemline and black heels. When she sat down on the soft couch beside me, her dress rode up quite high on the soft couch. "Whatcha got there, bro?" she coyly asked. I lit the joint, took a long, hard hit on it, and passed it to her. I was hoping the grass would keep me calm. By the time we finished the joint, it was almost 7 o'clock, so we decided to walk to the main house to have dinner. The main complex of the resort consisted of 4 buildings: the office, the restaurant, the nightclub, and a video rental store. Pammy received the usual stares when we entered the dining room, following the hostess to our table. The place was busy, but we were seated right away. The service and food were both excellent. Pammy and I enjoyed our meal and a couple of drinks, then decided to go across the complex to the nightclub. We found a table and sat down and were soon ordering more drinks. There was a live band playing in the club, and they were very good. Pammy got me up on the dance floor, and we danced to a couple of fast songs. Then, the band began playing a slow song. I started to head back to our table when I felt Pammy's hand on my arm. "Don't go, dance this song with me," she said. I hesitated a moment, but she coaxed me on and I finally gave in. Pammy threw both arms around my neck while I placed my hands on her hips as we danced. But soon, we were holding each other closer than I would have imagined. I could feel the gentle contact of our bodies, our chests and hips lightly brushing as we moved. I couldn't help myself, and with the close proximity, I felt that familiar, unwelcome surge of attraction once more. It was becoming increasingly difficult to disguise. I sensed Pammy might be aware of my heightened state, but she remained silent. In fact, I would have sworn she held me a little tighter, increasing the gentle pressure. When the song ended, she just looked at me and smiled before we returned to our table. We stayed at the club another hour, downing a couple more drinks each, before walking back to our cabin. Pammy was buzzing pretty good, so I put one arm around her waist as we walked. When we reached our cabin, Pammy asked me to roll another joint as she plopped down on the couch and kicked off her shoes. I sat down at the other end of the couch and rolled the joint. When I finished, I handed it and a lighter to her. She turned towards me, throwing one leg up onto the middle couch cushion and leaving her other leg dangling off. She lit the joint, hit it, and passed it to me. We were talking and joking and going into stoned, laughing hysterics. In all the craziness, Pammy had been wiggling around on the couch, and I now noticed her already short dress had risen up. She now sat there at the other end of the couch from me, her position revealing a clear view of her black, lace undergarment. The close-fitting fabric left little to the imagination in that area as I found myself staring, transfixed. My body reacted instantly, and when I looked up I knew that Pammy had caught me observing her closely. I blushed deeply, but she just smiled as if it were nothing and handed me the joint. I was still uncomfortable, and Pammy sensed it. "I think I'm going to turn in for the night, bro," she said. She rocked herself up onto her hands and knees and crawled down the couch towards me. "Thanks for the wonderful night." Then, I felt her hand on my thigh, just inches away from where my intense reaction was clearly evident, as she leaned forward and gently kissed me on the lips. "Good night, bro." Pammy slowly stood up and began to walk to her room. She paused at the hallway, turned around and gave a brief wave before she disappeared from the room. I sat there a few minutes longer finishing the joint. I was still embarrassed about my intense gaze, let alone having her catch me doing it, but I was relieved that Pammy said nothing about it. She could have made things really uncomfortable for me, more than they already were, but she was really cool about it. I got up and turned out all the lights before heading to my room. I closed the door, stripped naked, and laid down on the bed. Almost immediately, I sought to calm the tumultuous feelings that had been building. I sought to quell the throbbing tension, and in less than 5 minutes, a wave of exhaustion and mental release washed over me, leaving me breathless and quiet. I lay there in a state of quiet reflection for a few minutes before reaching for the towel I had from my shower and tidied myself. I got up to go to the bathroom to wash my hands when I noticed my door was slightly ajar. I know I was buzzing, but I would have sworn I closed my door after coming in. I washed up, got back in bed with that thought still lingering in my head, but fell asleep within a few minutes. I awoke the next morning to the delightful smells of coffee and bacon filling my nostrils. I pulled on a pair of sweat pants and made my way out to the kitchen, where I found Pammy busily preparing breakfast. I thought to myself, now this is unusual, because back at home she hardly ever cooked. Of the two of us, Pammy was always the free-spirited one and I was the practical one. All through our young lives, I had always taken care of her, which I didn't mind doing. So it was a real surprise having her do something like this for me. "Wow, you're cooking breakfast," I sarcastically asked. "Good morning, bro." "Yeah, I thought I might owe you one for last night," she grinned. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Oh, nothing. Just for showing me a good time," she said, and kind of giggled. "Whatever," I said. "Is it ready, or do I have time to take a shower first?" Shower after, sit down now. It's ready, she said, bringing a plate to the table. I sat down to eggs, bacon, sausage, toast, orange juice, and coffee. Pammy brought her own plate to the table and sat down to eat with me. She was sort of sitting sideways at the table, which caused her short bathrobe to fall open, revealing a generous expanse of her attractive legs. For just a split second, a less innocent thought entered my head, a fleeting, inappropriate desire that I quickly suppressed. My unexpected reaction stirred briefly before I pushed the thought away. Stop it. I thought to myself, you're making yourself crazy. Indeed, the whole idea was crazy. She may be the most beautiful woman on the face of the earth, but she is still my sister. She's my forbidden fruit. The most beautiful woman on the face of the earth? Did I really just think that? I asked myself. Jessie. Hearing my name brought me out of my daze. What? I said. Pammy giggled. Where were you? She asked. Certainly not here. Well, wherever it was, it must have been a nice place to have taken you away from me, she said with a sly grin. I'm sorry, I said, just thinking about something. Anyway, I was asking what you wanted to do today. How about we throw together a picnic basket and take a long drive up in the mountains, she asked. Maybe do a little hiking and get all close to nature and stuff. Yeah, okay, sounds like fun, I told her. All right then, she said. You go shower and get dressed and I'll clean up. And since I made breakfast, you are responsible for putting together the lunch basket while I'm in the shower and getting dressed. It's a deal, I said as I got up from the table. After showering and getting dressed, I was in the kitchen making sandwiches and loading 2 backpacks with what was to be our lunch when Pammy emerged from her room. Good gosh, she looked great. She had on a white tank top which accentuated her curves and made it apparent she wasn't wearing a bra, extremely short cut-off jeans, which revealed the lower curve of her perfectly tanned form, little white socks, and hiking boots. About ready? She asked. Yeah, just about, I said, not taking my eyes off her. Well, hurry up and let's do it, Pammy said, flashing me a coy little smile. I finished loading our backpacks and we went out and got in our rental Jeep. We drove around through the twisting, turning mountain roads for a couple of hours and pulled into a small park. Donning our packs, we left our Jeep and began hiking up one of the trails. The trail was beautiful, and we stopped several different times so that I could snap a few pictures along the way. It ended by bringing us into a large picnic area, complete with tables and small grills. Pammy and I walked to one of the picnic tables and sat down. We decided to go ahead and have our lunch while we were there. We talked and laughed as we ate, but I was having a rough time keeping my eyes from lingering on Pammy's form. Her thin tank top had become damp during the hike up, and it was now clinging to her form, the fabric revealing the contours beneath. After we ate, we walked around the scenic picnic area, noticing the different trail markers leading back down to the parking lot. Towards one end of the picnic area, we saw a good-size boulder that stood a little more than waist high. I told Pammy that she should go over and stand by it so I could take some pictures of her, as the view in the background was quite beautiful. She agreed and walked over by the boulder. We took a few pictures with Pammy standing, kneeling, and sitting on the big rock. How about some sexy ones? She asked. Before I even thought about it, the words, "You already are sexy," were out of my mouth. Why, thank you, bro, Pammy grinned. But I was thinking something more like this. I watched as Pammy reached down and slowly unbuttoned and unzipped her cutoffs. She adjusted them to reveal a little more leg and posed for a couple of pictures. Pammy climbed up on the boulder and sort of smiled at me. She had draped herself over the top of the rock, lying on her stomach with her appealing form gracefully elevated. After I snapped a couple pictures, she used her hands and kind of propped herself up so she could look around. We were virtually alone up there at the picnic area. there were just a few other people milling around towards the other end. I had a questioning look on my face when Pammy turned back with a naughty grin on her face. She winked at me before she reached down and began to adjust her cutoffs, pulling them lower on her hips for a more provocative effect. She had pulled them down a fair bit, then she slid down the rock a little so she could prop her elbow up on the rock and held her head in her hand. I clicked off a couple of shots before Pammy slid off the rock. "You're bad," I told her. She just grinned at me. She had pulled her cutoffs back up to get down from the boulder, but she winked at me and adjusted them again to mid-thigh level. Pammy stood sideways to me, with one leg out in front of the other so that her cutoffs were held up above her knees. I snapped a couple of shots, and Pammy looked around again before stepping completely out of her cutoffs. Underneath, Pammy wore a tiny, minimal undergarment. Needless to say, my reaction was intensely heightened by now, and it was useless trying to hide it. "Hand me my bottle," Pammy said, pointing at the bottle of water she had been sipping on. I handed her the bottle and stepped back. Placing one hand against the rock to steady herself, Pammy leaned back and held the bottle of water high above her. I clicked off shot after shot as Pammy began to slowly pour the water onto her upper chest. Soon, her thin tank top was soaked, as was her minimal undergarment. The thin fabric clung to her form, revealing the full outline of her contours. "Jesus, Pammy," I said, as I was barely able to focus the camera and click. When I ran out of film, I said, "Let's get out of here before you start attracting a crowd." She giggled as she pulled her cutoffs back on. We gathered our things and hiked back down to our Jeep. We decided to stay in for dinner that night. Neither of us was really that hungry anyway. Pammy said she would toss a salad if I would go and rent a couple of movies, so I jumped in the Jeep and drove to the video store. I picked out a comedy and a thriller and was about to leave when I remembered Pammy liked old classics. I quickly grabbed a classic romance film as well. I drove back to our cabin and put the movies on top of the television. I told Pammy I was going to take a shower before dinner and headed off for the bathroom. After a nice warm shower, I dressed in a tank top and gym shorts.